Welcome to Winning in the Margins with Jeff and Jamion. We're excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Jeff, how are you doing today, man?
All right, man. I'm Jam and Jamion. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to dive into our topic today, talking about failure and challenge. And I'm always fascinated with these two components and how you establish those within an organization. Because if you don't tackle those things right within an organization, you can't be great. And I think oftentimes we sort of try to push around and move around those things.
Right on. Yeah, I believe they're one and the same. They're a yin and a yang. You don't win without both. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. What's a failure you've had that at the time you didn't know how valuable it was going to be down the road, and now you know?
So much of it is about failure. My dad was a borderline Olympian, so he taught us from a young age failure. A large part of our upbringing, my brother works for the Boston Celtics. I've been a Division I coach for a long time. A big part of everything we did growing up was about failure. I mean, my father, we'd play one-on-one, and he would beat us 32-2, 32-4, 32-6. And, my mom didn't seem to understand it at the time. I mean, you think about it, you got two young boys outside, you've got a grown man out there. He's an elite level athlete. At this time, he's still able to dunk a basketball and, he was running like a sub 11 100-yard dash. So he was as elite an athlete as you can get for a father at that time.
Yeah.
And I don't think she fully understood, him blocking our shots and how hard he was playing out there. But when I look back on it, I look back at those times so much about failure, and he was really teaching us how to handle failure and how to raise to a standard. There weren't a lot of fouls called, and it was a tough game. I wouldn't say it was easy by any stretch.
Awesome.
But when I look back, I think that's one of the biggest failures was, he pushed us every time we stepped out there and didn't let up on us until we were able to kind of rise to the challenge. And it really built, some mental toughness and some physical toughness in my brother and I.
I love where you went there. What you describes growth. Growth requires understanding. Understanding requires humility. And humility requires character development, very much like that, or an event that just demands it because you fall so flat on your face that you have to understand, hey, I got to learn something. I'm always good enough to give my best, but I have opportunity to learn to develop. And until we learn to develop in the way that you described, failure becomes you instead of becoming part of your course to growth.
Well, I love that. That's rich. Failure becomes you if you don't learn to accept it and move past it. That's really rich. He would always say this at the end of beating us. He would say, "Keep practicing." He would throw the ball back to us and say, "Keep practicing." And he would, he's a elite level athlete, so that's like a thing. He had a mindset about it, and we would stay out there and practice. We'd stay out there for another hour. It's not like we lost, went in the house. We'd stay in there an hour. My brother and I, if it was 2-on-1, would start strategizing about how we're going to win the next time and all these different things. So, again, so much of it is having the right, I think honestly, having the right kind of mentor to show us how to handle failure.
Now, your father loved you very much, but he beat you 32-6, 34-6. And folks would look at that as, why don't you let him win? And that's exactly what he was doing when you understand that. When we're taught that we're going to be or enabled to do something, that's a great word, enabled to do something instead of earning what we want to do, it's just two different ball games. And the way your dad taught you, organically, you said you and your brother strategized. Was that organic, or did your father guide? Hey, boys, why don't you stay out here, figure out a plan, come up with, how did that come about?
Yeah. I was working on a document, like when your parent is in sport, at elite level sport, the way they teach you is different. Like most parents, I'm with a bunch of parents now, they're like giving their kids everything. But when your parent is an elite level athlete, they make you want it.
Yeah.
Right. It's so different. They make you come towards it. They make you ask questions, and they don't force it on you. So he didn't give us, he didn't ask us to strategize. We just sort of had to figure that out along the way.
Right on.
How it was always like, how can you win the game? How can we figure out how to win?
Now, why was that important? Why was winning important? What did that mean, and why was winning important?
I mean, whether, again, you're looking at the example, my father, if it's playing anything, could be cards, could be pool.
Yeah.
I mean, he exhibited the will to want to win. Don't even sign up if you're not going to compete and win. Yeah. And so, for us, that's the only thing we really knew was like, how can you find a way to win the game? And a large part of our upbringing in sport, especially, was you got to figure out how to win. And it doesn't matter how you win, but you got to figure it out. And, it's interesting, you talk about failure, and what it was able to do is like, now I would label that as a failure, but I really kind of reframed that my entire life to just, I had to learn how to do it.
So the character was being developed on the job
all the time. And I feel like the very best do that.
Yeah,
they make you define yourself. You hear these stories about Bill Parcells and these great head coaches, Phil Jackson. They make the player come to them with the information, having worked through it, instead of giving them everything at their feet. One of the things when you watch the NBA right now, we have so many young players in the NBA, and every organization is giving these athletes everything at their feet instead of having them figure it out and kind of learn it. And I think there's a learning opportunity that's missed. There's a leadership opportunity that pushes you into greatness because you've got to have the ability to figure it out.
And when you say the NBA has given them all the tools, there's your entitlement. When you have someone within, let's say that within the rookie class, that takes it on with the mindset of a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan, they're not going to see the same tools as the bunch. They're going to see an opportunity to find the challenge. So they're going to look for who's the current Kobe Bryant, who's the current Michael Jordan, and look to close that gap. And that's what your dad did with you guys growing up.
Yeah.
He was Kobe Bryant. You were the young up and coming rookie, and you had to close that gap. And when we're not taught that type of development, the separation is wide in comparison. And I'm not even talking about the names we know, but in comparison from you to the ability that you could have. It's absolutely absurd. My daughter, very much like your father, in the way that we have competitions. We've played the punch buggy game since you're a little girl, and I'm talking fierce to the point when my mom's riding with us. When my mom's riding, she'll get upset because a punch buggy comes into play, and it's we're one of us is getting the other. But we've done that with Connect Four. We've done that with Uno. I'm going way back now.
Yeah.
Games like Rummy. We play this game every single morning called Rubik's Race, and we've played it for, I believe, the last 4 years. It's Rubik's Cube, but it's on a board where you have a set of code. I'll call them codes, where it gives you the different colors that you need to line up, and then we go to work on lining them up. And I've never let her win in anything until she earned it. No matter what age she was, if she was going to win, she was going to earn it. And that game, Rubik's Race, she beats me almost every single time. Now we play a 2 out of 3 is 1 point. We keep playing, but it turns to 3 out of 5. Whoever wins 3 out of 5 is another point. And if the opposite, if she wins 2 out of 3, I win 3 out of 5, we go to a championship game. So we have a face-off type of deal. And man, she probably beats me 90% of the time. She had to earn that. First game she ever beat me in that she earned was Connect Four. And there's just a different process to that. You're learning that failure isn't bad.
Yeah.
We're not learning that we are a failure. We're learning to make progress. We're learning to close the gap. And so when I look at my positives and negatives as me being positive or me being negative, as compared to both, a negative times a negative is a positive, right?
Yeah.
I'm turning a negative and I multiply it by another negative. I'm coming up a notch. And that's the difference. I love the way your dad raised you. Are you working with your sons like that now?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know you got one little man, but you're 10 years old, right?
Yeah, I've got a 10-year-old and a 5-month-old.
Your 10-year-old. Are you taking what your pop and mom?
I'm treating my 5-month-old the same way.
Yeah.
I mean,
tell me how you're doing that with a 5-month-old right now.
Well, just challenging him. I mean, I think you can learn a lot. Number one, I'm amazed at having a chance to be present with my child every single day and watching him grow every single day. So like he's trying to crawl right now. And so when you're crawling, you're going to fall sometimes. I'm actually working on something about crawling that I think that could be a good carryover. Maybe we'll cover that some other time. But you talk about crawling, and people think you go from crawling to walking.
Right.
And you forget how challenging a process it is. I mean, the first part of the process is getting up on all fours and sort of looking around, and you're processing how you can do it. You've got a great idea, but you might not know how to carry it out yet. And so you can see him sitting there being like, I want to move. I'm ready to go and attack this thing, but I don't know how to do it yet. Right. Yeah. And so what happens, mom or dad gets on the floor, you start moving the arms, trying to teach them how to move a little bit. And so over time, they start to process that. Then the next phase is sort of like this little butt scoot, where they're kind of scooting and trying to pull both arms up and drag both legs. Right. And so that's a part of it. Then, at some point in there, they start rolling.
Right.
They start rolling. When they start rolling over, it's scary at the beginning. Right. So they're scared. They're going to bang their head. Now, one thing I don't do when he bangs, I don't run over and pick him up. I want him to know that he's okay. Right. And that he's all right. So I don't run over there. I just encourage him to get back up. And, so then that next part goes, he starts rolling over all the time and starts laughing while he's rolling over. Right. So there's a point in any process when we're trying to build into something where you start enjoying the work.
Right.
It was scary at first. Now you enjoy the work, and that's the rolling part of it. And now you're bringing humor to others. Now from there, you kind of get your balance a little bit. And then, he's not fully crawling yet, but, yesterday he's moving backwards. Right. So, and so you think you're moving forward, but you're really moving backwards. But others around you can see the progress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just, I just think there's a lot of neat things that go on through learning. And so, again, my point, working like my father, is encouraging, not over helping, encourage him to get up and trying to see how he's able to respond and then being there, like I don't catch him, but I pick him up when he needs to be picked up and just trying to encourage him. So, I think there's a lot of components there where, I think you hit on something that I don't want to miss. I think it's about having an earner spirit.
Oh, that's sharp.
I mean, and I would say this to our team, and I don't think our team understood it last year. I'm like, we got to have an earner spirit. It's really easy to feel like you deserve a lot of things. Men's basketball players or athletes. And there's a level of responsibility by the organization to make sure you have certain things. But you own your spirit. And I always want to have a hustler's or earner spirit, like a hustler is like a person that, sees what's needed in the environment and figures out how to get it and how to make the environment work for them. And that's what you want to be as a competitor. That's what you want to be. You want to have that earner spirit, that hustler spirit. And I think we've got to encourage that kind of mindset amongst our children, our family, our teams. I think that's really important.
That earner spirit fires me up. I stole that from you, number one. But what is a tool without an earner spirit? It's empty. It's incapable. Yeah. And that's the part that we're trying to lead our audience, is to knowing that without your full effort, without everything you have, and without believing that you're meant to give everything you have to own your story.
Yeah.
And your exact story being why your everything is needed. And when you don't have an earner spirit, wow, is it different? You have an earner spirit, your Final Four. You have an earner spirit, your Sweet 16, when you're not supposed to be. when
Yeah.
you're not power 5.
You know, you think about this, like if God gave you a hammer, whose responsibility is it to take that hammer and figure out what to do with it?
Yeah. I
Right. You
can
know,
do
and
all
every,
things through Christ who strengthens me.
right. And everyone has a hammer. Everyone has a tool. You know, I might be in the wrong area for this tool. So is it the world's responsibility to bring what's needed to me, or is it my responsibility to take my hammer or my screwdriver and go find the right environment where that's most valued?
And that's what we are. Whether you're a hammer, whether you're a screwdriver, whether you're a wrench, you're a tool. You're a gift that's meant to shine, and a gift that's meant to shine has an earner's spirit. Or you dissolve your gift. You take your gift away from the world. And my goodness, Jamie, you fired me up with that earner's spirit. That's it.
You know, we talked a lot about it with our group last year. You know, we're at a great university, and you know, for the folks out there that don't know, I'm a fired head coach at 10 years as Division I head coach, and always attack the game a little bit differently. Always attack the game with trying to figure things out. And you know, we're at this great university in Washington D.C., and it really was like, what kind of spirit do we need to have to be at the highest level here? And it's really easy to feel privileged. I mean, in some ways, we all want to feel privileged. I mean, you know, we look at, you know, we had the Queen passed away in England, you know, a few months ago, and everybody sort of wants to be the king and the queen. And I'm always like so curious about that, because I think so much of it is wanting to earn what I have. But all of us sort of want to be privileged. We sort of want things at our feet given to us easily. And I think you got to really try to fight against that, because having things given to you takes away from your ability to grow and become the very best that you want to become, and live a life where you're most satisfied.
Yeah, you talk about the king and queen, and I believe that's what, in large part, us humans look at champions as wanting their celebration, but we don't understand that the process is where all the joy comes from. And so you take a king and a queen. If that king and queen is full, they're working hard. If that king and queen is full, they're leading their people, and leadership takes a significant amount of earner spirit.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I know we're aligned with this, that we want our audience to grasp, is when we're bored, when we're looking for that steak dinner before we earn that steak dinner, it will always be empty. We'll always be full and bloated and miserable. But when we're earning that steak dinner, the energy will come along with it. One doesn't come without the other, though. If we're just fed, we'll never, the tools and the prestige will never, ever fill us. We'll live an empty life.
Yeah. You know, I always say, you know, I probably said this to you the first time we spoke. I was like, teach me something.
Yeah.
Like I always wanted someone to teach me how to fish. You know, don't give me the fish, teach me how to do it.
Right on.
And I feel like there's so much more that I can learn from that process, and then I can figure out maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe I can dive into it better. But you know, teach me something. And so we talked about, you know, again, we talk about like failure and challenge and all these things, and so much of it is just your mindset of what happens when you have a setback.
And there is an understanding to it. There was a good period of my life where I didn't understand how to have an earner's spirit. I read books. I mean, way back, Bo Jackson, Jake the Snake. I think his last name was Stapleton. I'm going back to when I was 8, 9, 10 years old right now, and I wanted to be a champion. I followed the folks that were doing it, right? Or who I thought were doing it. But what I was watching was their touchdown celebration. And there's a difference between the touchdown celebration, the cutting down of the nets in the Final Four, and what that moment really is. And that moment is an earner's spirit. And so you talk about teach me to fish. Describe what an earner's spirit looks like on a basketball court. So as a coach with your players, help bring an audience member that doesn't understand. They want it. Like, they want to be a champion, but the earner's spirit, they can hear it. They can feel it. But then there's a gap. Can you fill that gap for us?
Well, every day waking up, it's like I'm on this journey to be the very best I can be. And to be the very best that you can be, you first recognize that not every day is going to be the same. You don't anticipate the day going perfectly. You anticipate possible things that can happen that you've got to be able to work through. And I think so many times when you start building on a plan, we see it as like this trajectory where everything goes perfectly. It goes perfect every single day. And when you have an earner spirit, you're waking up and you're saying, let's say you were tossing papers, right? I feel like that's a job that people used to have, right? And you're doing papers, and it's raining out today, so it's going to take a little bit longer. Maybe it's snowing out, so you've got to put something on the tire so you can get there. Our earner spirit is living without an excuse. Right? It's knowing that every day that I get up, I've got a job to do, and I've got to find a way to get it done. And the job doesn't have to look like it did the day before. I mean, most times it won't. It's having enough pride in what you're doing to build a system in place that has some agility, where when things don't go perfect, you can still adjust and pivot and still get the job done. I think having that earner spirit is recognizing that every day I'm going to show up mentally and physically ready to go, having to do whatever I can to be ready to go and attack whatever the challenge is. Our listeners are going to have all sorts of challenges out there. Some of them will understand, some of them won't understand. But just know that when you show up at that door at work that day, wherever it is, you've got to have the mindset to go and be the best and to do what's required and to do so without making excuses. So to me, that's part of the earner spirit. And then within all that, it's like this passion to figure it out. And to figure it out, I think, Jeff, what's important to understand figuring out isn't doing it on your own. Figuring it out is knowing who I need to ask questions to. It's knowing what I need to read. It's knowing how much rest I need to have. It's knowing what I need to eat the night before. It's all these things that go into your ability to figure it out. So you're in the right mindset, in the right kind of place to go and do those things. This shouldn't be when you're on this pathway to be so many earners, or hustlers, they're working alongside other people in making deals along the way to be successful. You're not working in solitaire. You're working amongst others to get a task accomplished. So I think I think it encompasses all those things that I just spoke about there.
That's a great journey there. And in order to do all of that, we've got to understand that we are a champion. There's a champion that exists within us that's worth asking the question, that's worth pivoting, that's worth making the adjustment. And our audience needs to understand that the difference between a champion is they're willing to miss 100 shots. They just don't look at that missed shot. They look at the opportunity and the ability and the capability, and inside of their mind, they know that there's somebody special. What do I mean by special? Somebody that can make the shot, somebody that not only can, that is going to make the shot. And the progress is inevitable. And so we've got to wake up, right? And talking about a mindset to be the best. A mindset to be the best has to understand that you are the best, and your best is desired. If you look back at the wall right behind me, a world where we are on fire to give our best. And in order to be on fire to give our best, we have to understand that very person that just spilled the milk, that just ripped their clothes on accident, or woke up, broke their shoe, or whatever the case may be, that got a flat tire, that had a flat tire for the fourth day in a row and is late for the fourth day in a row, is still a champion. And that champion is able to make pivots. That champion is able to make adjustments. That champion is going to continue to learn. They're worth reaching out to whoever to ask the question to learn more. And man, it's a gap in the understanding. You hear so many people, and you've been around basketball for years, baseball, you're a baseball player, probably sitting in the dugout, whether this is in hindsight or it's just known. You have 13, 14 people in the dugout on a high school team. I don't know what college is, but you're going to have somebody that's ready to go to bat. And you probably had somebody on their team that was ready for you to go to bat and was glad that you were up to bat rather than them being the one in the moment. The only difference is the belief. Be the one that wants the bat in your hands and knows that you're capable of swinging the bat, connecting with the ball. And that takes understanding that God brought a champion into this world. You are one.
Yeah, I would sum it all up in, you got to be willing to put the work in to fight for you.
Put the work in to fight for you and know you're worth fighting for.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining Jeff and Jamion on Winning in the Margins.